Years later, the Concord from ashes evolves from a military alliance into a network of free worlds. But in an uncharted region of space, humanity discovers an ancient silvery brass grid capable of creating and destroying entire planets. Zara Nix leads the Obsidian Resolve through warped space, where geometry itself tries to tear ships apart, and faces the artifact's self-defense drones. Rejecting a forceful takeover, she broadcasts an open beacon beam, a compilation of peace treaties and children's drawings from liberated colonies, proving humanity came not for weapons, but for the chance to create. The artifact accepts the gesture and grants them a seed crystal, capable of transforming asteroid debris into fertile soil, promising an end to hunger across hundreds of worlds. The story closes as Nix implants a strip of living metal into the trunk of a Viennese maple grove aboard the Resolve, certain that the future will now be built, not stolen. Stay with us if you want to find out how the story ends, and don't forget to subscribe. Smoke never left the sky over Old Vienna. A century after the Suroth Dominion brands seared themselves into the broken marble of St. Stephen's, ash still drifted on winds too tired to howl. Beneath the pulverized streets lay humanity's heartbeat, not in parliaments or cathedrals, but in avalanche bunkers stacked 10 levels deep. There, in corridors stripped of ornament, voices whispered plans that refused to die. The day the last public broadcast from Earth went quiet, Dominion archivists tagged the occurrence as Cultural Extinction Event 1317 Delta. They filed it between a quasar flare and a livestock blight on Kesselminer, then forgot it. Silence, they believed, meant surrender. Silence was the first weapon we forged. Commander Zara Nix learned the art of surviving ruin the way some learned piano, methodical hours, bleeding fingers, repetition until muscle memory replaced fear. She had been 6 when the Suroth harvest skiff scooped the central districts of New Nairobi, 17 when she soldered her first plasma inverter in the tunnels beneath the Danube bedrock, 28 when she was chosen to helm Obsidian Resolve, a warship that did not officially exist. Resolve's birth cradle was an old maglev depot 500 meters below Vienna's Ringstrasse. The depot had once ferried diplomats between starports. Now its rusted rails anchored the skeleton of a leviathan. Kilometer-long spinal trusses scavenged from fallen Suroth carriers, composite plates recycled from orbital debris. Human ingenuity poured into every weld like molten defiance. Resolve was ugly, angles wrong, armor patchy, reactor shielding a quilt of alien alloys and Terran ceramic. But she breathed. Each systems check thrum felt like a dragon stirring beneath an ancient city. Nix walked the prow scaffolding, boots ringing on girder steel. Engineers slipped around her, rag-wrapped faces, augment plugs blinking amber, speaking 50 dialects that meshed into one language, urgency. She paused at the dorsal cannon array, where Chief Gunner Malik paced, measuring clearance for barrels that hadn't existed 12 weeks earlier. Recoil dampers will shear if we push max charge, Malik muttered. They'll hold, Nix replied, pressing a gauntlet to the carbon brace. They need to first volley has to decapitate the garrison before they can scream. Malik's laugh was a saw blade across stone. Suroth comms propagate on tachyon skip. They'll scream before the barrels cool. Then we make the scream a warning, not a call for help. She left him calibrating coil tension and entered the central conduit elevator, descending toward Resolve's heart. Reactor Bay 7, the Crucible, smelled of ozone and cold sweat. A stolen zero-point core the size of a freight container hovered inside a stasis cage, alien glyphs flickering like trapped lightning across its facets. 3 times Dominion enforcers had tried to track that core. 3 times human saboteurs detonated false leads, letting captured agents send back charred data slivers. Now the core pulsed in quiet allegiance, bound by algorithms Nix's engineers barely understood but trusted because they had no alternative. Dr. Aria Solano, hair singed, goggles reflecting the reactor's hungry luminescence, looked up from a scaffold. Power curve stabilized. We squeeze another 12% before thermal runaway. Push 14, Nix said. We launch tonight. Solano flinched. Tonight? Surveillance net. Went blind at 0300. Our ghosts in the Lazitz array spoofed system diagnostics. Dominion satellites will report clean sweeps until dawn. Solano glanced at the core. Then dawn comes early. Twilight cloaked the skeleton city as hydraulic lifts shunted Resolve into an upward-angled launch tunnel originally drilled for waste extrusion. Dust avalanched onto her hull. In command blister, Nix strapped into the cradle seat, 2 curved spars clamping shoulders, neural jack sliding into her occipital port. Ship and mind meshed, Black HUD shimmered with data streams. Hull integrity 71%, weapon charge 87%, crew readiness 62 souls. Bridge crew, report. Malik's voice crackled. Guns green, mags hot. Solano, core at 104%, coolant margins -4. Helm officer way, mag rail engaged, launch gate sealed. Nix exhaled. Open the gate. Far above, an iron lid that hadn't moved in 50 years groaned. Snow and rubble cascaded into the shaft, swallowed by thrumming kinetic shields. Resolve's dorsal light snapped alive, livid white spears piercing the darkness. Rails to full, Nyx ordered. Magnetic coils roared. Resolve lurched forward, inertia dampers struggling to translate mountain-shaking acceleration into cockpit tremble. The launch tunnel became a streak. Then, suddenly, stars yawned open and the Leviathan burst into Austria's night. Debris plumed behind like comet tail. Orbit awaited, but between Earth and that sky hung the Suroth garrison will custodian G32, a citadel station that had once housed 10,000 soldiers and now dozed with minimal crew. Nevertheless, its perimeter turrets tracked emergent contacts automatically. Custodian locking, way warned. Nyx fed location vectors into firing solution. Resolve's spinal railgun pitched upward. Inside the barrel, a tungsten-jacketed coil breach penetrator, scrap carved from Dominion war monuments, aligned with electromagnetic rails. Malik touched the trigger. The gun spat silence. No thunder, just air ionicing as a 6-ton slug reached Mach 20 before clearing the barrel. 40 kilometers overhead, Custodian's forward bastion caved inward. The slug exited the far side milliseconds later, trailing molten armor. A secondary slug followed, severing main reactor coolant loops. Station lights flickered, then extinction. Yet turrets still fired, automated subroutines. Blue lances raked Resolve's port quarter. Armor boiled. Damage warnings filled Nyx's retina. Port lattice breach, helm shouted. Nyx slid targeting over the turret cluster. Malik. Ready. In them. A half-dozen plasma warheads, each encased in salvaged Suroth missile canisters, vectored from Resolve's racks. They bloomed into turquoise suns. The garrison wheel fractured, debris arcs sparkling like fireworks above a haunted continent. Silence returned, deeper than before. Humanity's voice was still a whisper, but the galaxy would hear the echo. Hours later, Resolve drifted in high orbit, shrouded behind the mass of the destroyed station. Autoforges repaired hull scorches with melted armor scraps. Nyx stood before the panoramic viewplate, watching sunrise unwrap Earth in bruised gold. Fires ringed coastal megacities, Dominion strip processors siphoning oceans into tankers that would never depart now. Way approached. Launch successful, casualties 2, containment breach in Section 12. Nyx nodded, grief postponed. Dominion response time estimates? Outer patrol pickets will notice Custodian silent within 4 hours. Task Force intercept 8. Then we bleed stars before they breathe. She tapped comms to Subterranean Command. Begin Operation Emberfall. Wake every cradle. Across the planet, 7 more launch shafts primed. New York's buried reactors hummed. The Pacific Trench hangars unlocked clamps. Amazon cradle gimbals rotated towards dusk horizons. Each held a ship, none identical. All forged in secrecy, Iron Requiem, Grave Dancer, Nova's Howl vessels born of despair and algorithmic brilliance. Humanity was no longer hiding. Dominion recon cruiser Varask dropped from slipspace at Earth's L4, sensors scanning for anomalies. It found a graveyard, custodian shards tumbling, heat signatures fading. Its captain issued priority alerts. Algorithms sought threat vectors, none matched databank precedents. Then Resolve's plasma lance carved Varask in half. The pieces hadn't finished cooling when slipspace ruptured again. 3 more Dominion ships, then 9. Resolve's engine bloom flared, Nyx plotting kill corridors through the chaos. She wasn't alone. Shaft plumes erupted across Earth's nightside as new dreadnoughts clawed free of soil and sea, angles savage and furious. They howled into orbit like wolves unsilenced. Suroth Fleet Command, 5 systems away, processed inbound distress codes that made no strategic sense. A subjugated world was not supposed to field capital ships, let alone launch an orbital massacre. By the time Command voted on escalation protocols, the massacre had evolved into a rout. Nyx's neural HUD bled crimson from adrenaline spikes. She felt Resolve's frame jolt with every discharge, her heartbeat sinking to reactor thrum. Through smoke-veiled viewplate, she glimpsed another human juggernaut, Iron Requiem, drive cores spilling blue fury as it intercepted a Dominion carrier, ramming prow first, turning hulls to litter. History pivoted in those seconds, not on diplomacy, but on an engine built from stolen parts and a commander who refused extinction. Earth's silence fractured into roar, and the Dominion of stars looked suddenly mortal. When the last Dominion frigate broke apart, tumbling into gravity wells, a hush engulfed orbit. Human comm channels overloaded with cheers, sobs, static. Nyx sat in the cradle, shoulders shaking against restraints. On the monitor, Admiral-elect Hayes, voice ragged from bunkers beneath Alaska, said only one thing. The galaxy is listening now. Make sure it never forgets. Nyx closed her eyes. Resolve's wounded Lux curls whispered around her. Dawn touched the armor like first blood. Silence was broken. Now came the storm. The victory at Earth rewrote every algorithm the Suroth High Strategium trusted. Projection matrices that once described human resistance as statistical noise now flooded with red tide markers, warning of exponential destabilization. In subterranean vaults beneath the glass-spired capital of Syraxis Prime, Elder tacticians argued whether the anomaly could be quarantined with targeted strikes. By the time consensus formed, the anomaly had become a campaign. Obsidian Resolve required 41 hours to jury-rig patchwork repairs, swap depleted rail barrels, and offload wounded to the Greenland triage caverns. 41 hours was a lifetime in orbital war, yet not one Dominion ship ventured within missile range. Fear, Nyx realized, functioned like stealth. It bent sensor attention elsewhere. During the night cycle, she stood in the comms alcove, visor reflecting a hollow map of the inner Suroth supply lattice, data stolen from Verisk's shattered black box. Red lines traced convoy routes feeding 3 forward arsenals. Of those, the Emer anchorage at Jupiter L5 stored enough antimatter to glass Earth twice. Destroying Emer would slice a vital artery and send new tremors through the Dominion spine. Crew consensus was immediate and savage: take Emer. Resolve could not do it alone, but Operation Emberfall had birthed siblings, 8 dreadnoughts and 14 lesser cruisers now circling Earth like silent sentinels. They answered Nyx's summons with clipped acknowledgments, reactor signatures flaring as captains forged burn trajectories. Fire in the giants. Jupiter's swollen horizon swallowed the starfield as the Emberfall flotilla dove through its magneto sheath. Lightning arced across ammonia clouds, radiation alarms howled. On Resolve's bridge, Malik strapped himself against a bulkhead, muttering prayers in a dialect older than the Dominion. Nyx filtered sensor clutter, isolating Emer's silhouette, a spine fortress tethered to a cyclopean refinery skimming the planet's metallic hydrogen. Dominion doctrine relied on early warning pickets far from asset nodes. But the sudden decapitation of Earth's garrison had forced hasty redeployments. The nearest patrol wing was 2 hours down orbit when the human flotilla breached visual range. Nyx opened a fleet-wide channel. Hammer in silence, finish in thunder. Engines answered, throttling to full burn. Hull plating groaned. Jury rig seams glowed red as friction ion struck. Emer Anchorage's combat AI detected incoming mass only 20 seconds before rails opened fire. That was 19 seconds too late. Nova's Howl led the spear, nose cannon disgorging a penetrator laced with cobalt shatter rots. The slug bored through layered shield bubbles like a hot iron through ice and detonated inside storage ring 7. A surge of white nova erupted, a flash so brilliant Resolve's external cameras autopolarized. Shockwave rippled outward, shredding docking booms. Automated defense turrets spat plasma, but target acquisition drowned in debris echoes. Human ships weaved through the chaos, leading velocity. Boarding claws extended. Bulkheads screeched as Marines breached. Nyx watched helmet cam feeds, corridors bathed in red strobe, Dominion technicians scrambling, firefights echoing with pulse rifle retorts. She keyed Channel 3. Engineering Bay priority, capture antimatter caskets intact. On cam, Lieutenant Abney vaulted a pipe trench, magnetic cleats sparking. Copy. Containment stable, we're rerouting coolant. Across the anchorage, Dominion security attempted counterboardings but found hull seams welded from within, human welders sealing them into isolated compartments. Hours stretched into brutal minutes, resistance fragmented. When the last reactor node clanged secure under Terran override, Nyx transmitted to all decks, Emer is ours. Breakage chains. Explosive charges set along structural struts severed the anchorage from refinery tethers. Thrusters stolen from junkyard cruisers ignited, driving the station from Jupiter's pull. Antimatter vaults were too volatile to move, so Solano enacted Plan Sickle, rigged the remaining storage rings into directed demolition. 10 minutes after evacuation, Emer turned inside out, a sterile implosion that bloomed into a spear of radioactive snow, venting invisibly into Jovian night. The High Strategium lost their second asset in as many days. Echoes on Titan Edge. Victory bred audacity. Fleet Intel found schematics for the Dominion Relay Hub on Titan Edge, an outer system moonlet wreathed in cyan haze. Capturing it intact could gift Emberfall command and control reach across half the sector. But Titan Edge hosted not just hardware. It was manned by 20,000 shackled laborers from subjugated worlds, overseen by a legion of Dominion wardens. Liberating them would ignite rebellions far beyond any ship's guns. Risk factor catastrophic, Way cautioned. Potential yield historic, Nyx answered. She convened a war council inside Resolve's Grav Garden, a narrow coil where seedlings sprouted in stolen hydroponic trays. Admirals long dead would have scoffed at such informality. Here, captains debated amid tomato vines and dim sunlight simulators. Plan Gale emerged, split the flotilla. Half would faint at the Beetle outpost, drawing wardens off-world. Nyx's task group, Resolve, Iron Requiem, and 3 frigates would ghost Titan Edge's dark side, couched in engine-silent drift until planetary rotation unveiled the arrays. 3 days later, the faint-lit Beetle stationed like a supernova. Dominion command scrambled. On Titan Edge, siren klaxons wavered as wardens diverted half their garrison. Resolve's ground pods launched through chemical haze, hulls swaddled in thermal scramblers. Nyx descended with first wave. Her boots sank into methane-soaked dust. Towers loomed, carbon glass spires laced with dish petals. Through magnifier, she saw huddled lines of laborers, shock collars glinting. Cut the chains, broadcast hope, she whispered. Assault squads split, planting charge clusters on guard barracks. Solano's infiltration team slid through service culverts, injecting code seeds into relay cores. When explosives blossomed, Nix's voice commandeered the facility's PA in every slaver tongue. This is humanity. We remember. The collars unlocked now. Lock protocols fell, collars popped. A roar rolled across the plain. Freed workers surged, overwhelming startled wardens. Some grabbed fallen shock sticks, others simply ran weeping. Above, relay antennas realigned, rephased to boost Solano's override, a repeating beacon hurtling into deep space. The yoke is broken. Rise. By dusk, Titan-Edge's flag changed hands. 9 transport barges, once tasked with ferrying refined helium, now carried 20,000 refugees toward the Emberfall LZ at Ceres, escorted by Grave, Dancer, and Misfit. Human casualty charts glowed, heavy losses in barracks breaches and 1 frigate lost to high orbital mines. Nix read each name before sleep, engraving them in memory's iron. Rumors of gods falling. Weeks became a blurred march of strikes. Orbital hydrofarm seizures at Vesta Cradle, data vault heists on Europa, sabotage of the mass driver foundries near Mars Roche Shadow. Everywhere, the Dominion arrived too late or in too little strength, their once perfect logistics fraying like old rope. Rumors spread faster than fleet orders. Merchants whispered of Terran dreadnoughts that fired asteroids like slingshot stones. Enslaved miners in the Antares Drift painted Nix on cavern walls and prepared hoarded explosives. Surath propaganda nets declared humanity devils born of chaos. Some frontier worlds began to pray to those devils for salvation. The High Strategium responded with escalation, Operation Iron Cage. They would retake Earth itself in a single overwhelming blow, flagship Imperious Dawn, 12 battlespheres, and 30 destroyer lines. Their approach vectored through Sol's outer Kuiper shield, where Dominion gravity wells could suppress Terran slip intercepts. Emberfall scouts intercepted comm bursts detailing the Armada's departure. Humanity had 10 days. Forge of Constellations. Nix convened every captain on a holodeus projected between fleet flagships. White dots, Dominion vessels, marched across the grid. Red arcs, Emberfall assets formed a feeble crescent. Direct confrontation is suicide, Malik murmured. Agreed, Solano said. But letting them reach Earth unopposed is annihilation. Way proposed dispersion and guerrilla strikes, whittle momentum. Requiem's captain argued for saturating Dawn's energy grid with EMP torpedoes. Ideas stacked like sandbags against a flood. Nix listened, gazed distant. Finally, she spoke. We turned the flood. She unveiled her gambit. Project Sharon. During Varas data mines, Intel recovered Dominion protocols for slipgate stabilizers, massive rings that shepherded fleets through volatile subspace rifts. One dormant stabilizer, Gate 47 Omega, drifted near the Ort object Talassa, 318. Power offline, management AI in safe mode. If restored and retuned at the exact harmonics, it could twist subspace currents, rerouting incoming slip signatures into a destination not of the fleet's choosing. Destination where? Requiem's captain asked. A gravity sink, Nix answered. The barycenter between Talassa 318 and its twin fragment, a well of rock shards dense enough to shred hulls. A silence heavy as lead settled. To weaponize a gate, Solano breathed, is to gamble the lives of thousands on timing milliseconds. Nix nodded. A gamble the Dominion did not prepare for. Consensus required one more push. Nix provided it. A projected casualty matrix showing that without Sharon, 94% of Terran resistance would evaporate within a month. With Sharon, survival odds leapt to coin flip range. Better a coin flip than a loaded gun, Malik declared. The captains agreed. Race for 47 Omega. Resolve, Requiem, and Nova's Hull made the burn. 6-day sprint into the frigid desert. Hull ice bloomed every surface, systems strained under cosmic ray hail. The gate appeared on scopes like a black halo wreathed in pale dust, kilometers of alloy superstructure dormant since Dominion mapped this quadrant. Boarding parties breached maintenance hatches crusted with centuries of hoarfrost. Inside, corridors echoed emptiness. Gate AI core hung silent, its lattice choked with dormant subroutines. Solano's text patched in pulse inducers, breathing synthetic life back into alien veins. Power relays hummed, ring segments rotated with tectonic groans. Subspace harmonics poured through emitter pylons, painting aurora across the void. Nix stood on Resolve's bridge, feeling the thrumming resonance in her fillings. Dawn's Armada blipped on long-range tracker 5 days out and closing. Calibration became obsession. Micro-adjust fields too early and the fleet would recognize distortions. Too late and Sharon would snap, collapsing into a singularity that could swallow the task group. Solano's team ran simulations until nosebleeds stained consoles. On the 4th night cycle, a Dominion scout destroyer appeared at the periphery, advanced spear of the Armada. Resolve's railgun silenced it before the crew knew they'd been seen, but the schedule shrank. Nix ordered all ships into stealth drift, reactor signatures at dead crawl. The 5th day arrived. The gate opens. From Resolve's command blister, Nix watched slipspace tear like fabric. Imperious Dawn emerged, a colossal sphere of obsidian plating etched with relays, flanked by destroyers like steel satellites. They coasted toward the dormant-seeming gate, scanning. Solano whispered over private channel, flux threshold and safe limits. Alignment green. Nix's pulse hammered. On my mark, now. Gate emitter pylons flared ultraviolet. A ripple coursed the ring, invisible but for sensor shadows. Dominion ships registered anomaly, but inertia carried them forward. They crossed the threshold and subspace geometry inverted. To outside eyes nothing happened. To the fleet, reality contorted. Dawn's helms logged impossible star maps, its AI shrieked error strings. Then stone greeted steel. The barycenter choked with asteroid grid embraced the armada, ripping hulls, vending atmosphere instantly. Nix watched Dawn's energy core overload, flare, extinguish. Destroyers collided, chain reacting into blooms of silent fire. Minutes stretched, screens painted carnage. Gate 47 Omega powered down, circuits hissing. Human cheers were muted, stunned by scale, but relief surged like floodwaters. The unstoppable armada lay in ruin, its might sundered by a weapon Dominion arrogance never conceived. Aftermath and oaths. Months later, Dominion lines reeled, retreating from outposts now emboldened by whispers of Earth's impossible victories. Yet Nix saw new storms brewing. Fractured enemy factions rallying under warlords who promised retribution, subjugated populations begging for aid humanity could hardly supply, and the moral weight of Sharon, thousands dead in a trap. In Resolve's garden coil, she addressed fleet captains once more. Plants, taller now, rustled like listening crowds. We bought time, she said, voice raw. What we do with it defines whether we become tyrants or torchbearers. No one answered at first. Then Wei stepped forward, hand resting on a young maple trunk. We build constellations, alliances that outshine empires. We teach the galaxy that silence can forge swords, but hope can shape galaxies. The Council of Captains pledged resources to liberated worlds, forged charter articles for a coalition bound not by species but by refusal of chains. They named it the Concord of Ash. Humanity would not rule it. Humanity would stand watch, memory, and muscle should darkness rise again. Nix recorded the charter into Resolve's core log, etching words beside the first names of those lost in Vienna's bunkers. She looked toward the viewport where distant suns glimmered. Silence had become storm. Storm would become song. Year one of the Concord dawned on a galaxy trying to remember what daylight felt like. Worlds that had known only the Dominion's mandated uniformity bloomed in divergent colors, the aquamarine banners of Vatari communes, the ochre sigils of the Taliesin craft clans. The carbon black field bearing Earth's silver delta that fluttered as a promise rather than a warning. Yet for every system cheering emancipation, two more teetered toward famine, piracy, or sectarian vengeance. Empires wrought from the core outward, removing the husk left jagged bone. Nix spent much of that first year away from Resolve, shuttling between charter signatories like a black-armored courier of compromises. The garden coil aboard the dreadnought had become a diplomatic forum. Calisthenics meditated among cucumbers. Exireth pacifists debated mining quotas beside roses grafted from the last Vienna hothouse. Every agreement felt like fusing alien alloys, promise matched by fragility. Meanwhile, the Dominion did not simply vanish. Surviving legions splintered along ideological fractures. The Red Sigil cult declared the loss of Tarsus a cosmic trial, vowing purification through fire. The Fifth Meridian Directorate traded credits for mercy, holding shipyards hostage in exchange for amnesty. Warlord Nox craved stitched together a raider horde that pillaged border settlements under the banner Justice through Strength. Intelligence painted a mosaic of chaos. The Concord needed a unifying symbol, something larger than fear of the past. Nix proposed Project Lighthouse, to convert the dormant slipgate at Earth L2 into a broadcasting beacon, its quantum lens arrayed to carry real-time holo across 30 parsecs. A free press at relativistic scale, truth rays cutting through propaganda. Funding such a dream required resources no single member possessed. The Vatari offered Atmos processors. Earth engineered the superconductor relay. Titan X slaves volunteered as construction crews. Even Malik, who trusted explosives more than ideals, donated decommissioned nuclear thrusters to power the station's grav anchors. Yet the lighthouse threatened those thriving in darkness. 3 months before hull completion, Kraft's marauders hijacked a Concorde cargo train outside the Helix Nebula, executing crews and carving the words "Veils stay closed" on hull plates. The message was clear: shine light, invite shadow. Nix recalled every captain. Resolve rearmed. Iron Requiem docked fresh armor. Nova's Howl swapped her ruined nose cannon for a prototype graph spear. But War Council data projected heavy civilian losses if a fleet chase erupted through populated corridors. Tactical brilliance would not suffice. They needed subtlety. Thieves of night glass. Enter Captain Yara Cheen, the Concorde's first sanctioned privateer. Half myth, half migraine to accountants, she commanded Shadow's Laughter, a corvette coated in adaptive prism plates. Its crew recruited from Helix smugglers and ex-Dominion signal jammers. Nyx had once threatened to court-martial Cheen for siphoning coolant from Resolve's reserves. Now she handed Cheen sealed orders emblazoned with the Concorde seal. Objective: infiltrate Krave's fortress barge Hammerfall, retrieve NAV keys for his dispersed flotilla, and transmit their locations to Concorde strike wings for simultaneous neutralization. Secondary objective: locate political prisoners rumored aboard. Among them Professor Abel Quill, the astrophysicist who decoded the Suroth tachyon compression algorithms, now fueling Concorde communications. Cheen grinned like a shark offered new oceans. Shadow's Laughter vanished into Helix static, Iris engines pulsing once before Cloak. For 3 tense weeks, nothing. Then Beacon 5, a listening post on the Karth spiral, caught a burst of encrypted prose. Laughter in the Citadel's cellars. Music follows. Way, now Concorde signals chief, decoded coordinates using Cheen's favorite drinking song as cipher. Strike wings launched. The fivefold midnight. Hammerfall drifted near a brown dwarf, drawing fusion bleed to refuel its plasma guns. Inside, Krave's mercenaries feasted on plundered Lux grain, boasting of raids to come. When Concorde stealth torpedoes perforated Hammerfall's starboard tanks, the feast turned into an airless scramble. Boarding pods hit portside seconds later, disgorging Marines in mirror-black armor. Nyx led Team Alpha, pulse pike cleaving doors. She hated rescues. Variables multiplied, but Quill's algorithms underpinned the lighthouse. Without him, the beacon's quantum lace could unravel at first solar flare. Cell blocks reeked of rust and heavy ozone. They found Quill chained to a grav-inversion rack, eyes bloodshot, yet burning with curiosity even while exhausted. Fascinating, he croaked as Nyx severed shackles. Krave's excitation blades almost proved my theory on field differentials. Save the thesis, Nyx grunted. Hoisting him. Your lecture hall awaits. Elsewhere, Shadow's Laughter danced among hangar deltas debris, picking survivors from vacuum as Cheen pirouetted her ship too close to mine clouds for any sane pilot. Concorde frigate Belisarius lured Krave's command cruiser into a grav eddy. Requiem's grav spear impaled it through both reactors, pinning it like an insect specimen on magnet glass. Within an hour, Krave's flotilla lay in salvageable pieces. The Marauder Lord himself died refusing to eject, bridge consumed by catalyzed hydrogen fire. The Helix exhaled. The beacon's first dawn. Construction resumed under triple security. Quill, bones still knitting, hobbled along Lighthouse's spinal corridor muttering corrections to coil calibrations. On the vernal equinox of Terran Standard Year 2, Zara and Nyx keyed the activation sequence from Resolve's bridge. Panels across the slipgate ring pulsed, lens petals blossomed, and a column of quantum-entangled photons erupted, threading subspace with invisible gold. Every Concorde member world received the inaugural broadcast, not speeches, not victory parades, but a montage of rites, Vat-Ari sky dancers tracing freedom spirals, Earth children planting saplings in Vienna's garden coil, Titan workers welding their names onto station ribs, Ebony marrying her engineer partner aboard Nova's Howl while crew banged wrenches for rhythm. A galaxy forged by violence watched gentle acts of living and found itself disarmed. The broadcast ended with Nyx's voice. Tomorrow is louder when sung by many. Embers in the throne hall. The lighthouse's beam sliced through residual Dominion propaganda, but not all hearts turned. On Syraxis Prime, remnants of the Suroth High Strategium convened beneath the mosaic of their shattered empire. Chancellor Heshik, scarred, half-cybernetic, slammed a claw against the marble dais. They replace our fear with gardens. The word tasted like poison. Heshik's inner circle proposed desperate measures. Reactivate the Acheron chain planet-killer warheads hidden along former slave worlds. Activate them simultaneously to demonstrate Dominion wrath still mattered. Yet such horror required the Omni shards. Biometric keys once held by 9 chancellors, now scattered. One shard lay in an abandoned comms vault beneath Old Vienna, lost during humanity's uprising. Without it, the chain could not trigger. Strategium envoys bribed undercity scavengers, dispatched assassins toward Emberfall. Intelligence reached Nyx via Concorde rumor nets. For the first time since Vienna's ashes cooled, war threatened Earth itself not as occupied ground, but as heart of a newborn polity. Nyx convened Crisis Council. We end the chain before new shackles forge. Plan Bryhammer formed, a 2-pronged strike. Infiltrate Syraxis to seize remaining shards while Resolve led a faint assault at the Tarvek frontier to draw out Strategium High Guard. Cheen volunteered infiltration. Solano insisted on going. If Acheron's failsafes run on zero-point cascades, I'm the only surgeon qualified. Way scrubbed flight paths until hallways in her neural HUD blurred. As resolve-ready departure, Malik found Nyx in the garden coil, pruning a vine growing around the maple trunk. You trust hope to win wars now, he teased. Nyx sheathed clippers. I trust fear to lose them. We gave the galaxy reasons to breathe. That's more volatile than antimatter. Malik chuckled, tapping the vine. Then let's keep breathing. Through ash, a door. Shadow's laughter plunged into Serax's orbit masked by bustling refugee trade ships. Sheen, Solano, and a squad of Gravnol operatives donned chameleon rigs, slip-thinning through maintenance shafts into the capital sublevels. Surveillance arrays still bore Dominion precision. One wrong footstep meant dirt nap and an oubliette. But Vienna's catacombs had taught humanity the symphony of silence. In Vault K42, Omni shards awaited, crystal keys radiating cold violet under stasis glass. 2, 3, 4, 8. Missing shard? The Vienna piece. Paradox. Strategium still lacked detonation quorum. Solano transferred virus suites rewriting shard authentication to fail indefinitely, then planted a fractal bomb to devour database backups. Exfiltration almost succeeded, until a warform sentinel spotted transient heat haze. Alarm screamed. Sheen's squad exfiltrated via waste vents, but Solano lagged, arms scorched by pulse scatter. Security drones flooded corridors. With extraction window dying, Solano keyed calm whisper, "Go. I'm asset-positive risk." Sheen cursed and pivoted back. At Junction Delta, she lobbed an EMP shard, flash-blinding sensors long enough to haul Solano into auxiliary lift. Gunfire cratered bulkheads while the lift crawled toward upper docks. Above, Strategium guard wings scrambled fighters. Then Resolve's fate roared across outer defenses, rail salvos painting the sky. Sirens diverted, pursuit wavered. Laughter recaptured the infiltrators, engines screaming beyond safety margins. Slipburn punched out with hull plates glowing orange. They limped to Lighthouse Dry Dock, triumphant and broken. Concord at the crossroads. A week later, council delegates crowded Resolve's auditorium. Solano, arm and sling, projected Acheron chain schematics now irrevocably bricked. Heshik's last terror gambit lay dead. But Serax's still fielded fleets, other warlords nursed vendettas. Nyx addressed the chamber. Today proves war thrives on memory of pain. So must peace, memory of why we end pain. She proposed Cirrus Accords, binding Concord and reformed Dominion sectors into mutual aid pacts, supervised by neutral monitors broadcast live via Lighthouse. Aid for restocking starlarders, hydro seeds, fusion parts. In exchange, warlords ceded shard remnants, disarmed slave implants, accepted open elections. Many argued it naive. Malik muttered, bureaucracy breeds ghosts. But Quill reminded them that photons travel forever if unimpeded. Give hope a path ended Outron's hate. Vote tally flickered, passed by narrowest margin. The long dawn. Years unfolded. Resolve ferried diplomats more than soldiers. Titans freed children graduated astrophysics programs built in Lighthouse's shadow. That Ari sky dancers performed on Serax's Grand Plaza as Heshik watched from gilded prison balcony, irony acid on his tongue. Malik retired to oversee asteroid forge gardens, teaching railgun recoil calculations to students who might never spot a warship. Nyx stayed aboard Resolve, commander turned guardian, eyes on the dark where new empires might gestate. She tended the maple now reaching the command blister ceiling, its roots entwined with steel ribbons. Leaves brushed her shoulder as if reminding her storms birth forests. One quiet rotation, Way brought news. First extra-sector species petitioned Concord membership, creatures who'd only heard of humans through Lighthouse stories. They required translators, tolerance, and a place at the table. Nyx looked at the young leaves and smiled. Tell them there's room. Silence had become storm. Storm became song. Now song blossomed into constellation, a map of choices, fragile but luminous. Earth remembers, the galaxy listens, and somewhere children who have never tasted ash dare to dream of stars unchained. The relay hub at Kithra Edge bloomed to life just as the lighthouse beam swept past, catching its polished veins and scattering a constellation of false dawns across the vacuum. From Obsidian Resolve's view blister, Zara Nyx watched the light refract, a quiet pulse in her temples reminding her that beauty was never neutral out here. Every glimmer bent morale or misled missiles. Still, she allowed herself a moment, just one, to drink in the spectacle before she turned back to the tactical slate. 15 years had passed since Vienna's launch shafts thundered open and Earth's silence shattered into storm. In that time, the Concord of Ash had swollen from a desperate alliance of cratered planets into a sprawl of independent star pockets knitted together by sheer will and the lighthouse's unbroken song. Freight lines braided along its photon lanes, symposiums of Vat-Ari philosophers debated Titan's engineers in real time. Food surplus worlds beamcast cropped genome packages to famine belts that had never tasted fresh grain. But the Concord's gravitational center, political, strategic, mythic, remained the dreadnought that refused to die. Resolve still bore the pitted scars of Custodian G-32. Jupiter's lightning storms, Gate 47, Omega's graph shear. New armor plates lay over old wounds like lessons tattooed into iron. And deep inside the garden coil, the Viennese maple had grown broad enough to press leaves against bulkhead lamps, filtering them into warm green dusk. Nyx brushed fingertips across its bark on the way to the council pit where holograms gathered. Wei appeared first, posture crisp despite gray streaks now threading her kelp-dark hair. Malik occupied an adjacent node, oil-stained coat and half-finished wrench tucked like a pin behind his ear. Dr. Solano arrived last, right prosthetic gleaming, irises still ghosted by radiation scars but focused and fierce. "We have a wrinkle," Wei began, flicking sensor feeds into shared space. Lines of crimson script marched through starlight, deep-skin logs from the far pale, uncharted territory where Concord prospectors had uncovered a supersymmetric energy bloom too clean to be natural. Solano whistled. "Those readings match pre-singularity spires." Dominion Archives said the spires were a myth. Dominion Archives said humans would never leave their cradles, Malik growled. Nyx zoomed the projection. At the heart of the energy bloom hovered a lattice of silver hexagons folded into non-Euclidean spirals. The structure's mass registered negative in 3 standard grav metrics. Absurd, dangerous, irresistible. "Any word from the explorers who pinged this?" Nyx asked. Wei's silence spoke first. Then, softly, transmission truncated mid-packet. "We lost them 60 hours after this capture." The room chilled. Malik stepped into the hollow, magnifying a faint timestamp plume. "There. Detonation residue, energy spike falls exactly on a Curla dropout curve. Someone tested a planet killer." "No shards left for planet killers," Solano snapped. "We melted them. We melted the will to build them." "History suggests someone always forges anew," Nyx murmured. She drew a fingertip through the light map, plotting vectors. "If that lattice is a forge, it predates the Dominion. It could shape the next empire or end every attempt before it starts." Wei zoomed the outer shell. "Slip readings corporate nothing we know. Standard drives will tear apart going in blind." "Then we don't go blind," Nyx said. "We light the path. Prepare resolve. Notify Requiem and Laughter and Howl." Quill, now Arch-Chancellor of Concord Science, sealed himself in the lighthouse's quantum bay, coaxing the beam beyond its design to paint real-time telemetry across a void that had never known maps. At Ceres, Titan-raised prodigies recalibrated grav-hull titling algorithms faster than Resolve's engineers could upload them. Malik cannibalized 2 asteroid thrusters to weld asymmetrical countermass fins along the Dreadnought's keel. If reality bends, we lean with it. On departure night, the dock field spilled over with citizens demanding speeches. Nyx declined the dais. Instead, she allowed the cameras a single frame, her gloved palm pressed to the maple's trunk. The image dropped into the lighthouse pulse. Across 30 parsecs, refugees recognized roots taking hold in steel and understood. The far pale unfolded like a silk tapestry dunked in ice water, colors bled into new spectrums, engine wakes twisted into fractal echoes. Resolve's hull groaned. Compensators shrieked. Every weld Malik had touched glowed red, then violet, then settled. The silver lattice ahead spun slow and colossal, dwarfing the Moon-class surveyor wreck now orbiting in frozen silence. "Energy bleed stable," Solano reported, though sweat sheeted her brow. "But the lattice resonance is adjusting to us." "Like it's listening," Malik muttered. Sheen's shadow's laughter shimmered out of cloak, drifting close enough that its prisms caught shards of alien starlight. In an open channel, she breathed, "Let's knock on the god's door." Nyx issued the one command she trusted more than tactical jargon. "Remember." Resolve opened every sensor pedal, floods of radiation cascading through algorithmic sieves tuned by decades of borrowed pain. Inside the lattice, chambers bloomed, gardens of violet dust swirling around crystal monoliths that recited mathematics older than planets. And in a cul-de-sac of mirrored corridors, they found the explorer's beacon, still lit, but voices gone. Search drones returned data fragments, controlled singularities suspended in magnetic crucibles, gene vaults carrying seeds that responded to quantum-entangled prayers, graph fonts capable of splitting continents gently like bread. In Council Pit, Virtual Malik whistled low. Whoever built this wasn't hunting. They were preparing. Preparing what? Wei asked. To fix the mistakes Empire makes, Solano whispered. Nyx weighed silence a full minute. Or to decide which mistakes deserve deletion. She ordered retrieval of 1 crucible for analysis, no more. Temple robbery had broken lesser civilizations. But as drones grappled it free, lattice surfaces rippled, liquid mirrors budding predator-bright drones. Unbidden, unowned. On a conscious reflex, the lattice defended itself. Novazal fired the graph spear, shattering 2 guardians. Resolve's spinal rail thundered, penetrating a 3rd. Yet more hatched, geometry spawning geometry. Field tensometers spiked, slip torsion threatened hull seams. Nyx felt the decision surface in her mind like destiny's tide. Hold the prize and risk fleet ruin, or release it and retreat with nothing but memory. She chose a third path. Broadcast beacon, she ordered. Full lighthouse key. Let the lattice hear us. Wei hesitated. Raw bandwidth here meant exposing Concord encryption to an unknown intelligence. Nyx met her gaze. Trust leapt the void. The maple had taught them. Roots might crack foundations, but it chose water, not conquest. Photon flood burst from Resolve's calm petals, pulse patterns encoding every Concord treaty, every refugee manifesto, every child's drawing archived in lighthouse memory. A roar of humanity laid bare. Lattice drones froze in perfect stillness. Then, one by one, they folded away, surfaces cooling to mirror. The crucible settled into stasis, accepting docking clamps as if granting audience. Nyx exhaled shakily. Sometimes the gods prefer gifts to theft. In the weeks that followed, Concord xenolinguists conversed with silent geometry via harmonic mapping. They learned the lattice was less weapon-forged than memory engine, storing blueprints for possibility, awaiting species mature enough to ask not what they could wield, but whom they could feed. The crucible seed, once decoded, promised clean starforges capable of transmuting asteroid slag into fertile soil, enough to end famine across 100 broken belts. Chancellor Cole stood beneath the Viennese maple, eyes misting as he envisioned orchard worlds. Malik grumbled about recalibrating forge coils but secretly planted a pomegranate pit in fresh soil between maple roots. Wei compiled a new broadcast, lattice visuals, Concord debates, a simple message repeated in every tongue: the future is made, not taken. Nyx watched it leave the lighthouse, a beacon riding photons into corners even Dominion fear hadn't reached. Around the maple trunk she wound a thin band of silver lattice, living metal singing faint vibrations, memory of silence, echo of storm, beginning of symphony. She did not know if war would fade, if empires would learn humility, if the Concord would resist rot. She knew only the beam kept shining, and every garden, on ships, on moons, in hearts, grew taller toward that light. In the quiet bridge she whispered the first words Vienna's bunkers had ever taught her, now reshaped by years. Earth remembers, so we can dare to forget despair. Somewhere beyond hull-plating children who had never tasted ash aimed telescopes at the glowing seam in space and laughed, each peal of joy a note in the long song of unchained stars.